So, are we ready with proceeding then? All right. I call to order the Housing and Economic Development Commission meeting for Thursday, April 15th. It is 6:07, and I think we can start with roll call. So I will call out the name, and then you can just indicate that you're here. I see Bill. Bill is waving, right, Bill?
I'm here.
Okay, Sarah?
Here.
Sarah, just go ahead and say your name and say you're present.
Sarah, I'm present.
No, your whole name, I'm sorry.
Sarah Burdash, present.
Okay. Daryl?
This is Daryl Hinchin, I'm present.
All right. Let's see who else was on here that I saw. Al? Oh, you're on mute. Al Vang? You're on mute. Do you want to unmute? Dennis?
Dennis Unger, present.
All right, so Sarah, Daryl, Mark Jenkins is not present today, and Bao is on mute, and then hopefully she comes off mute. Oh, Dennis, there you are. All right.
Commissioner Kachuk, it looks like there's a message in the chat from Bao saying she's just resetting her audio and working on getting herself unmuted.
Oh, okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and approve the agenda. Does everyone have the agenda?
Yes.
Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve. Hinchin.
Second.
Okay, the agenda has been approved. Next, we will go and I don't think there's any additions or anything, so we are approved. And then approval of the January 21st, 2001 minutes. I hope everyone has gotten a chance to review that.
Hinchin moves for approval.
Okay. Second? Do I hear a second?
A second.
Okay. The minutes for January 21st, as written, have been approved. Okay. Let's move on to new business, and I will turn it over to Jeff.
Great, can you see my screen? Oops, what's going on? Try this again. Are you seeing my screen?
I see it.
Probably see the one moment here. No. Okay, you're still seeing it?
Yes.
Yep.
So thank you, Vice Chair. Commission, just at the meeting tonight, I did want to do an update on some of the status of projects happening in the Gladstone area as part of the master plan that was adopted by the city back in 2007. So just for the commission's, let's see here, it's not, here we go. I did want to provide a little bit of background information on the Gladstone neighborhood redevelopment plan from 2007, just to frame the context of some of the improvements and investments that have already happened in the neighborhood, and then to talk about some of the active planning work that's occurring within the neighborhood. So for commissioners have been around, this may be information you know, but just wanted to provide that context and background. So as I mentioned, in 2007, the city went through a neighborhood engagement, community engagement process with the neighborhood, and then did work around planning for the physical development of the Gladstone moving forward. And a number of good planning initiatives came out of this plan that's now almost 15 years old, including the vision statement, which talks about the vision of Gladstone being an inspiring, vital, and stable neighborhood, striving to protect and portray its history, which is kind of a thing that's a thread that's kind of brought up throughout the whole plan, recognizing the very unique history of Gladstone, preserving the open space and ecological resources, and then providing a great neighborhood to live, play, and work. And in that plan, it adopts kind of 9 guiding principles for the Gladstone neighborhood. So the first was designing the future of Gladstone as a village. The second was transforming the regional trails. As you know, there's 2 regional trails that are kind of at the center of the Gladstone neighborhood, the Bruce Vento Trail that runs north-south, and then the Gateway State Trail that runs kind of east-west and actually intersect in Gladstone. So transforming those into kind of celebrated village corridors, making Gladstone a compelling quality of life choice, weaving the natural systems and the ecological functions into the built-in recreational fabric. The 5th is allowing Gladstone's future to whisper the story of its past. There's quite a long section of the history of the Gladstone neighborhood and the rail yards and the businesses that were located in Gladstone dating back to the 1800s. And so wanting to speak to that as part of the development that happens there. And then really enhancing or really transforming the walkability of the neighborhood is the 6th guiding principle. The 7th being kind of what I would say is a multi-generational neighborhood, providing a neighborhood with resources and housing and services for kind of all people at all stages of life. Making, being a guiding document for others. So making the Gladstone Master Plan a model for others to follow. And lastly, making multimodal links. So that's talking about transportation, providing a variety of transportation options within the Gladstone and areas beyond. So those were the 9 guiding principles that were articulated in that plan. And then this is just the summary of the master plan itself. And much like the North End, which you may be more familiar with because it's more recent, was really established this master plan as a vision document, not to be overly prescriptive necessarily in terms of physical layout of buildings and sites, and not even necessarily uses, but allowing flexibility to kind of create this vision, which is centered around the preservation of that large park in the center of the Gladstone Savannah, transforming some of the older commercial buildings into housing, really a mixed-use neighborhood with housing, retail, and then making a lot of those kind of physical investments in the streets, as well as the transit, and as well as the trails and the future transit way. So this is, when we are actively working on projects in Gladstone, this is kind of the document we're referencing on what that larger vision is for the area that's kind of centered at Frost and English. So, redevelopment is complex. As you know, it's been 15 years and there's been progress. But I would say it's, with any good redevelopment plan, it's really not relying solely on private investment. It recognizes that to be successful in kind of achieving that vision, it warrants kind of a substantial amount of public investment in the parks, open space, and transportation systems within the neighborhood. So I did just want to highlight some of the public investments that have happened in Gladstone. You've probably been in the neighborhood. I know some commissioners live in the neighborhood. You're well aware of it, but the biggest was certainly the kind of formally establishing the Gladstone Savannah, the 23-acre park that's been kind of established as a permanent public space, public open space. It includes very kind of really cool interpretive trails that kind of interweave the history of the site with the natural elements. There are some active recreational uses in there, and then a lot of work around kind of the restoration of some of the native landscapings on that site. And then the picture on the top there is actually kind of the plaza that is located where the former roundhouse for the rail roundhouse was located for the moving the locomotives from one side of the track to the other. So that's I don't know the exact date of actually when the Savannah those improvements were put in, but certainly were driven by the vision plan. And then this is actually a video. I'll play a couple videos here of highlighting some of the street infrastructure improvements that the city has made. This the final phase of Frost Avenue was done in 2019, and that's when this video dates to. But just wanted to play this video that our communications team put together. So hopefully this works. Nope. Back.
Hi, I'm Assistant City Engineer John Jaroche. We're out here today on the Gladstone Phase 3 Improvement Project, which represents the final phase of improvements along the Gladstone. Improvements with this project. The crews are currently working on installing the system, as you can see behind me here. One of the biggest changes motorists will see is the narrowing of the roadway, which will increase green space, reducing runoff and improving water quality to Wakefield Lake. In addition, we're going to make it more bike and pedestrian friendly by adding a blacktop trail on the south and a concrete sidewalk. First part of the project will be wrapped up in the next couple of weeks. The second part, from Prosperity to Clarence Street, and then eventually from Clarence Street all the way to English Street, will be wrapped up by this fall. Road that's much more pedestrian friendly.
And the second slide I have here is just very quick image of just the before and after. So you can understand when the city designed this and built this, how those kind of guiding principles established in the Gladstone master plan were integrated into the design of this, with the narrowing of the road, the trail increases, the water quality improvements, and a lot of the native landscaping that was kind of replanted as part of the project. And then the last forward-looking public investment that I wanted to highlight, which I know we talked about at our last meeting in January, is the Rush Line corridor. So this is the bus rapid transit way that will run from downtown St. Paul up to White Bear Lake. There will be 4 stations in Maplewood, one of which will be right in the heart of Gladstone. So where the Bruce Vento Trail crosses Frost Avenue, that is where one of the stations will be for the bus rapid transit line. And this is one of the Metro Transit ways, so it is bus. It's not light rail; it is bus service. But it's actually almost entirely located within a dedicated transit way. So it's on kind of its own roadbed and does not operate within mixed traffic. So a substantial improvement to the transit service within the neighborhood. And you can see the timelines here that still working on the kind of station areas, the stations themselves, with construction still planned to start in 2024 and operation in 2026. So this really is achieving kind of that 9th guiding principle of a multimodal transportation investment in the neighborhood. And then did want to highlight again some of the completed private investments. There's really been 3 phases of development that have already occurred. The first being the Shores of Lake Phelan, which is kind of it's a senior living building on the far west side of the Gladstone neighborhood. That construction, of course, is done. And then the 2 phases of the Frost English on the northwest corner of the intersection are complete, one being a family housing development and the other being a senior building. So again, you can see how the principles of the multi-generational neighborhood are also being incorporated into the private development that we're seeing. So that's the kind of the larger background. And then what I really wanted to talk about was an update on where things are at in terms of development within the neighborhood. So I know this map was included in your packet. And the red properties, kind of the red highlighted properties are properties that are currently owned by the city. blue property, there's one to kind of the south on English Street. That is currently owned by the county. And then we are aware of some development or potential private development and kind of those orange parcels. So to kind of go through each of these and give you an update on where things are at, the city has taken and this is actually included in the Gladstone plan, was the city to be actually active in the land acquisition, to kind of take a land acquisition strategy to kind of assemble properties to facilitate redevelopment, because given where the sites are and some of the constraints to development, there was kind of a need to the city actively purchase properties as they become available. So we've done that throughout the neighborhood. Again, we have only done it with a willing seller. When they are interested in selling, we've been kind of engaged in the conversation and been able to put some money into our capital improvement plan to purchase those. So the ones that we currently own, the former Moose Lodge, which is, you can see my cursor here, this property right here, probably most familiar with it. We purchased that closed in May of 2019. The council, there was actually some water damage in the property. So back just a couple months ago. And so just on Monday night, the council actually adopted a resolution to proceed with demolition of the Moose Lodge building. The challenge is we anticipate that projects will probably require some sort of city assistance through tax increment financing. And so the demolition would trigger kind of a 3-year clock. So we would have to establish a redevelopment district in that site within 3 years. But we're pretty confident that there's interest in the development community to purchase that to pursue development. So the council did authorize us on Monday to proceed with demolition of that building to kind of make it development ready. So demolish the building, parking lot, and kind of prep the site for development so it's shovel ready when the development is selected and the purchase agreement is signed. And we also, the council actually, just to jump over to the Gladstone House. So the Gladstone House is this property right here. It's actually on the north side of Frost Avenue, just east of Clarence Street. As I actually learned today when I was reading through the documents, it's actually the old New Canada Town Hall building. So one of the oldest buildings in Maplewood. The city purchased that in 2018. And the council also on Monday adopted a resolution to proceed with demolition of that building. So it is in very rough condition and really related to the public safety hazard and kind of deteriorating conditions of the buildings. We think it's a priority for the neighborhood to proceed with demolition. We're pretty comfortable with that because we actually have a developer that's interested in that site. So their name is MWF Properties. They've done projects throughout the metro, and they already have an agreement. So across the street on the south side of Frost is actually a parking lot that's adjacent to the Philippine Center. That's actually owned by the city, but the Philippine Center owns a parking lot on the north side of Frost Avenue that is adjacent to the Gladstone House. So that the developer actually has an agreement in place to facilitate the land swap. So the developer would purchase the Philippine Center's parking on the north side to incorporate into their development site. And then they would, as part of the land exchange, would then give the city-owned property on the south side of Frost Avenue to the Philippine Center to be adjacent to their site and to provide parking to their building. So that agreement is in place. And as I said, we're working on finalizing a purchase agreement with the developer to proceed forward with a project, a housing project. It's exclusively housing on that kind of combined site between Clarence and Hyde Street. So that's the update. And then to jump over to the Maplewood Marine site, which is over here, Maplewood Marine. So Maplewood Marine is this kind of orange property, and then the city owns the vacant land to the east of it. If we go, well, I won't flip back, but if you go back to the master plan, calls for housing on that site. There's a developer that actually has an agreement to purchase the Maplewood Marine site and is now talking to the city about purchasing our property combine those properties and into one development site for a exclusive housing, would be entirely housing, a project that would be consistent with that Gladstone master plan. And then just go over to the fire station. As you probably know, the city is in the process of building a new north fire station, consolidating the two stations up at C and Hazelwood. And just on Monday night, the council received the bids and actually awarded the contract for construction of that fire station. So that is going to begin construction yet this spring on that new fire station. Once completed next year, the fire department will consolidate their station, and the Gladstone fire station will move over to the new station, at which point this site will become available for, the city doesn't have an identified use for it, for any other type of use for our operations. So we've just started the process of looking at getting it appraised and starting to think about the marketing of that site for sale. And then I think that's covered everything on the north side. Yeah, so then on the south side, right at the southeast corner where the Hmong Funeral Home is, you may recall that over the past 2 years, so in 2019 and 2020, there's a developer that is very interested in redevelopment of that site and has applied for tax credits, the low-income housing tax credits through the state, part of the super RFP for an affordable housing project on that site. But they have not been awarded tax credits in the past 2 years. So we actually just had a meeting with them last week. They are very dedicated to this site and will be applying again here in 2021 for tax credits for an affordable housing project on that site. You may think, like, wow, we're 0 for 2. So what's the chances of getting awarded credits on the third run at this? But there's some really strong indications that the project will be very competitive in the tax credit process this year. And the reason, there's two main reasons. One, Minnesota, the tax credit award process has redone their scoring system, and they are now giving a significant number of points to projects that are adjacent to existing or future transit stations. And so with that transit station for Rush Line, which would be right here in that close proximity, it really boosts the score of the site for the tax credit competitiveness. So that's the first. And then the second is Ramsey County actually last year kind of did some one-time funding for affordable housing projects. I forget the exact dollar amount, and they funded a project. It was just a one-time fund to support some new housing unit creation for affordable units. And the project, they funded one project in St. Paul, but the county is committed to funding the second project being in suburban Ramsey County. And what they've decided to do is actually put that money into the pool with the tax credit process. So rather than create their own process, they're going to kind of include the money in the Minnesota Housing's request for proposal project for allocation to a Ramsey County suburban affordable housing project. And so this developer is very engaged with both Minnesota Housing and the county on kind of the criteria that they're looking for to do a project on that site. So we're hopeful that they will be more successful in 2021 in getting tax credits and moving forward with the project on that site. They have also indicated that they continue to talk to the property to the south, which is the manufactured home park to the south, to see if they can facilitate a sale of land on that, purchasing that property to incorporate it into the development. So those conversations are continuing. And then the last item is the blue property. That's actually owned by Ramsey County Rail Authority. And their plans are, there's really no, it's a great trail. You get the intersection of the two regional trails, but there's really no trailhead in this neighborhood. So Ramsey County has identified this site for a trailhead for the Bruce Vento Trail. So that's kind of that we've seen a while ago. We saw kind of an early concept sketch. It would have a parking lot, restrooms, typical kind of trailhead amenities, water, bike maintenance facilities, those types of things. That's what the county is looking at using that land for. So that's the update. That's kind of where there's a lot of projects in play in this area, and a lot that we think will be moving forward soon in terms of future housing projects that are consistent with that vision plan. So I'll kind of pause there and see if there are questions or any comments on what's happening in Gladstone.
Well, I can certainly echo that land development and progress move slowly because I have been in the Gladstone neighborhood even before the shores of Lake Phalen, the whole huge senior area when it used to be mobile home park. And but it has moved and it has been good. And I was on the task force for the master plan for the Gladstone neighborhood. And I guess, you know, it has been good to see like the park. I have myself brought my grandkids there, and it is a very nice park. And there's a lot of history. There's a lot of signage that talks about the history of Gladstone. And I think it's a treasure that Savannah was preserved and, changed into a park area, because it used to be nothing but blight. It was just an abandoned piece of property that the railroad had left. And so they've done a lot of work, and the Historical Society and the preservation and cleaning up the land is like a massive amount of work that took place there. So I think that has been wonderful. I guess the street construction did take its toll on some of the businesses when it was happening, but it has turned out nice, and the walkability of the neighborhood is 100% improved, because I used to walk along the shoulder to get to the meat store, and it used to be called Borchard's. Maybe it's called Borchard's now. I can't even remember what it was called before now. Or to the bakery, and now there's actually a sidewalk and a roundabout, and the streetscaping and things have been really good. I guess the question that I have is, there's still somewhat of a blight area right on Frost, and I noticed that there are quite a few cars that aren't parked to go to the park area, but to do business with the, I think it's a car repair, car restoration, car shop that's right there. Is there any discussion that business would relocate, or they would kind of blend in more with the area as it develops? You know, like on Grand Avenue, where you don't even notice that there are garages there and things like that.
Commissioner Kachuk, are you talking like north of the Savannah?
Yeah,
the
across the
new development. Yeah, I know there have been past conversations about sale of those properties, but no, there have not been any recent discussions with those owners about potential development on those sites, or any sort of improvements on the front of them. We know they are in rough shape, in tough shape, and probably have a number of environmental remediation projects we'll need to accomplish on that site before they'd be ready for development. So kind of been focusing at this point on those developments that are that are in kind of the front of the line, just because I want to make sure that we continue the momentum of private development on projects that have the strong potential of moving forward.
And the properties that are kind of in discussion right now for housing, are there affordable housing units in those projects?
Yes, actually all three of the projects that have kind of developers that or have developers' interest or control of property, all three would incorporate affordable housing units into them to varying degrees and different levels and different percentages, but they all do include affordable housing.
Okay.
Jeff, I got a question on the, let me try this. Can you hear me?
Yep.
On the rush line, and I should know a little bit more about this, but that's going to go over the Bruce Bento Trail, is that correct? Through the whole city?
Correct. Yeah, in Maplewood, it really entirely within the Bruce Bento Trail corridor, except up near the mall, where it will come off the trail corridor over to the mall and then St. John's Hospital, and then kind of head north back on the trail corridor. So yes, it's using that right away.
What's the plan for the bike and walk trails there? Is that going to be side by side, or?
There will still be the full regional trails, bike and pedestrian trails within that corridor. They will be separated from the transit corridor, so you'll have both the kind of busway as well as the trails, and they will be separated. I know the design is working on what is the separation. Is it vegetations, fencing, to look at screening from adjacent properties, but also to avoid the conflicts between the translite and the trail that will remain.
So what's the right of way on those right now? It would seem to me if you're going to have side by side, you're going to be taking a lot of condemnation with landowners and homeowners and.
No, there is adequate right of way for in Maplewood for both. The transitway is probably 24 feet wide, and then the trail would be rough numbers 12 to 14 feet wide. So there's, from the designs that I've seen, there's adequate right of way there to accommodate both.
Do they have estimates on the traffic? I don't know that's the right word since it's one bus, but the volume of runs that are going up and down that on a daily basis?
Yeah, I think at its most, at peak, it would be 8 to 10 minutes, so one bus each direction every 8 to 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Oh, does any of that bus line, it's like there's housing that abuts to that trail, correct?
Correct.
So what is the distance? Because there's a right of way there, are any of those residents concerned with, the added extra noise and pollution? Well, it probably won't be much pollution. Are they electric buses or a combination?
They are, they're planned to be electric. So they're planned to be electric buses. But I'm sorry, what was the question on?
Yeah, I guess if they were going to be taking up any of the, yards or any of the property of the owners that, abut to them and where they might need land.
There's not a comprehensive amount of land acquisition that needs to happen throughout the corridor. That right of way is wide enough to accomplish both, that they're not acquiring additional land kind of up and down the whole corridor of people's yards. I know back in 2019, there was actually community engagement done on this is probably not the right term, but the screening plans for the project, which is it's a very green corridor, a lot of trees and vegetation and greenery within that corridor today. That, how do we retain that to the greatest extent possible, but also ensure that there's landscaping buffers between both the trail and the transit corridor and the residences that abut it throughout Maplewood.
Are there any other questions? Do any of the other commissioners have any comments or questions for Jeff? So this was a discussion and update item, so there's nothing that we have to do. So I guess we can move on to unfinished business. Is that correct, Jeff?
I'm sorry, so I missed the last part of that. Commissioner.
I said, there's nothing that we have to act upon, so, oh, I guess Val has a question. Yes, but we're not hearing Val yet. Val, it looks like you're off mute.
Yes. Are you guys not able to hear me still?
We can barely hear you though.
I'm not able to hear you now.
Can she type her question?
Yeah, can you just maybe chat your question? In the meantime, if Dennis, if you want to take over, don't let me hug the whole meeting here.
Oh, you're doing fine.
Come on, I elected you.
Yeah, I know. That's your penance. Let's go. I'll take my question.
While we're doing that, I'll see if I can find a good cross section of the.
Should we move into the business engagement program and get back to our questions?
I can do that. You want me to get into the business updates quite quick?
Yeah, I think let's move into the business engagement. We'll wait for Val to finish typing.
Okay. So I just wanted to do a really brief update. I know we did an update at your meeting in January, and we were anticipating then that we would have the final kind of all the business visits done and the final report presentation this evening from the St. Paul Chamber. But Yao Yang with the St. Paul Area Chamber, who is really manages the project, is on maternity leave. She had a baby and she's out for 3 months, and it came early. So it was a bit of an unexpected change there. So we're just going to, we've completed, here's the list of all the businesses we've visited. So far, I think there's 1 or 2 left to complete. And then we will for sure have kind of the final wrap up of the business reports and the findings from the information we've gleaned from those business visits. We'll have that presentation now at your next meeting in July once Yao is back from leave and able to put together that report. So just that was the only update I wanted to give, was very quickly where we're at with the 2020 outreach. Understanding the pandemic really threw this one off course from what our typical practice has been, but we'll for sure get that for you in July.
Yeah, I think we only had Gabby's nails left, and I think it was being rescheduled, but I would have to say that I think these visits are always very enlightening, and I think the businesses are always happy to have Maplewood come and visit them. I think it shows them that, you know, Maplewood is open to listening for. We already had our testing. I don't know why there's another one going on here. Do you guys hear the sirens?
I hear it on your computer.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in Forest Lake, and they've already tested the sirens this morning, but now they're going off again.
Don't they usually do it on Wednesday too? Like, why are they doing it today?
Well, and it's like 2 houses down is where the sirens are. That's where the thing is, and so it's really loud. But I think Kim and Yao do a great job as far as, being there on site for these meetings. And a lot of times, the St. Paul Chamber is a great partner for Maplewood to have because they bring it on like other programs that they can suggest to the businesses, other kinds of grants or like recycling or when one of the businesses had a question about, where to post jobs. I think Kim sent, the Ramsey County Job Connection Board to them, as a possible site. Because I think quite a few of the businesses do have, openings that they are recruiting for. So it's a great partnership, Jeff. That's all I guess I'm trying to say that Maplewood has with the St. Paul Chamber. That's all I had to say.
Any other questions for me or comments?
Okay, Jeff, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have to log on to another device. So I want to ask you, you mentioned that in the past there has been community outreach or engagement efforts done. Is that focus only in that neighborhood before this project took place?
Back at Gladstone and just the master plan or
yes.
Or yeah. Yeah, so certainly when the plan was created, that's when the most lengthy kind of robust community engagement occurred for creating of that master plan. But certainly with each project, so anytime there's a individual project that's moving forward though, that also includes engagement with the neighborhood. So as part of our process, we notify the neighborhood. There is oftentimes a neighborhood meeting with the developer themselves. And then certainly there's opportunities for, we send out a survey to the neighborhood. They can get us back comments or questions or give us a call. And then as part of the planning commission and council review, there is a formal public hearing for each of the individual projects that moves forward.
Okay, so I guess this project took place and it's with the understanding that the community's voice has already been heard and they've already voiced their interest to move forward with the Gladstone project?
Right, yep.
Okay. I asked that just to make sure since I have family members and community members who will be affected by this project, even though I want to echo what Joy said. As a kid growing up in the neighborhood, or not in this particular neighborhood, like a few streets over in St. Paul, just driving through Forest, to see the development and see this particular neighborhood come to life, instead of like driving through and you feel like you're somewhere lost in the 50s or 30s, way before our time, and just seeing the neighborhood kind of age out, and seeing how much it hurts the business there. So I guess if there's already community engagement done, particularly to the areas and the streets, to the residents that will be directly affected, then I don't have anything else to say, but I just want to ask for the community members who are a few streets over, if they, those who do not speak English, those who do not participate in any sort of formal county hall meetings, how do they get more information? Because as far as community engagement goes, those voices aren't represented. Those voices aren't heard. And when it comes to projects taking place, it's great. It adds values to their home, but at the same time, they have to foot the other bills, even though it's like a few blocks down, and it disrupts just a lot of, I guess if I put routine would be wrong, just the way traffic is and just disturbing the neighborhood. So how are the council planning to also include their voices, or how should they reach out to actually have their voices heard? Even though I feel that it's a great development, again, to see this part of Maplewood come to life because it's so neat, close to St. Paul, and it's close to the lake, and it's it's an area everybody drives through. So yeah.
Right off you. Yeah. So, and you're just talking about general engagement on the bigger picture development as opposed to individual projects or the public infrastructure or specific things that are happening. Is that kind of your question?
Yes, because I would say, again, I support this, even though I feel like we're making decision for the other residents who are near, but they don't speak English and they don't know what's going on. And you said there's community outreach and engagement done, but if they're unaware and they can't fill out the survey, how is it that their voices are represented in this project?
Sure. I think it's a really good question. And I think it's something that we talk about in terms of our community engagement citywide. How do we engage the parts, people in the community that have traditionally not been included? So, I know that citywide, there's been an establishment of our Multicultural Advisory Commission that's really working on this topic. We have the Maplewood Organization on Racial Equity that also focuses on this topic on, how do we get out to the community for these major projects to seek input from, again, those communities that have traditionally not had high participation in our community processes. So I don't have a real good, this is how we will be doing it for the Gladstone neighborhood, just because it's right now it tends to be on a project by project basis, but we're certainly open to input on how we can improve those communications and engagement practices as we look at kind of everything across the city. I think there's ample room for improvement there.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for answering that. And how would the community reach out to the city? Would that be you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm always happy to talk to anybody about any of the development plans or projects happening in Maplewood.
Okay, I'll just do that. I'll reach out to you and I'll pass information.
Sure.
Bob, and I think those are really great questions. And as Jeff says, things change. I mean, from the time that I was on the task force to now, there is a big picture, but all these little individual moving pieces change in terms of, just even say the Hmong funeral home. At one point, that wasn't even, part of the discussion. I think when we did the whole master plan, but now, the conversation comes up where there's a developer and it's going to be affordable housing. And I think it is, a Hmong group. And so, those little pieces are always changing, and how many housing units are they putting there, and what types of amenities are going to be brought in or not, or the fire station's going away, which at the time of when I was on the Gladstone task force, that wasn't even part of the thought. I don't think, maybe, but I think some of the communication are the people who live in the area and that know about it, as in you and I and whoever else, is in that area, to sort of, have discussions with our neighbors and try to get the word out and, make sure that we get back to Jeff, or make sure that they're heard at, the community meetings when they come up. And sometimes it's just by happenstance that we even come across some of these meetings. In fact, as you were speaking, I was going to ask Jeff about any updates on the Menards, improvement or whatever they're going to do. I think they're tearing down the store and enlarging it. And I know that there was a resident group that was talking about the noise and, all the traffic that goes in and out, and now it's going to be bigger. And, I only made it to one meeting, and I know the mayor was at the same meeting I was at. But that was quite a while ago. So, it's always like trying to keep your ears open as to, what's happening. I don't think we can always depend on, because everyone is busy. And so it's not anyone's fault that, we don't always get all the information when we want it. Sometimes we have to go out and seek it. That's all I wanted to say. But Jeff, if you could tell me a little bit about Menards, that would be great.
Yes. Jeff, I do want to just jump in. Joy, you made a good point. I personally think from an entrepreneur standpoint, always, anytime development, infrastructure is always great for the community, no matter how we ask the question, how we run the discussion in a circle. It's always good for the community. At the end, everyone benefits to its own extent. But it's just good that our council members don't make decisions for the community they do not speak to, for, and who did not vote them in, as well as those who are out of touch. But again, if Maplewood so does have a racial equity and inclusion team, then I would like to be able to share that to the community. I would like to see that that team is diverse and it does represent our community, because Maplewood is a beautiful city. It's an inner city, suburb city that everyone would love to move to and just think of when it comes to inner city suburbs. I think I said that wrong, but I would like to see just our city thrive. But at the same time, I think just with so many things going on, it's best to really have those who are speaking for the community members who are afraid to come out and speak out, meet them and really advocate for them and their needs, even if it's just paving the sidewalk down the street. And yes, it adds property values to them, but they understand why their taxes has gone up like $2,000 for the year. So thank you.
And Bob, note that Bill Knutson is on this meeting and he is part of the city council. Shout out to you, Bill.
So that, there are no other questions. There's really no action on the business outreach. I just wanted to, because it's still a unfinished business item, I just wanted to have it on the agenda for that brief update. So I have nothing further on that.
Then moving on to visitor presentation, I don't think there are any, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then commission presentations? Nothing on that. Okay, then staff presentation, I guess we are back to you, Jeff.
Sure. Let me hit two things that we've talked about just to...
And I did was wondering about the Menards thing too.
Right. Well, before giving my normal thing, so I just quickly found this. Now, certainly this is just, can you see my screen of the Rush Line BRT? You seen like the two little roundabouts? No?
Yes.
We see it.
So this is a very zoomed in, obviously early sketch, but this just shows the Rush Line corridor. So this is oriented north is to your right. And so this is the Rush Line corridor and the Bruce Vento Trail corridor. And this actually shows the very preliminary design with the Gateway Trail. So you can see that the right-of-way line is actually all the way out here. I don't know if can you see my mouse cursor? Is here and here. So you can see there's ample space within that right-of-way for the transit line, the trail, separation between the two, and green space on either side of all of that. So that's the just very quick sketch of how just the corridor can be laid out within that existing right-of-way. And I'll just since you brought up Menards, there are really no changes to the project. They were approved last year, always anticipating very early last year. It was March of last year. Always anticipating starting the construction of that project in 2021. The council approved a year extension of the project in March. So you've probably noticed they've acquired the homes to the south on County Road C, right? Yeah, C, and they've demolished those homes. So they're moving forward with that project as it was approved by the council and with the conditions the council added onto it based on some of the concerns from the neighbors about traffic and noise and light from that use. So I don't know if I have much of an update beyond that.
No, that's great. I just didn't know that they had already demolished the houses. I haven't been kind of down that way lately.
Sure. Let's go back to my share screen on the. Nope. All right, here we go. So a couple of development updates I wanted to provide. First was, I know we talked about this at the last HEDC meeting. The city's been actively marketing and trying to sell the former South Fire Station on London Lane for, I think, at least since 2013. There was a purchase agreement in 2020 that fell through. And now we have two developers that are about as interested as you could get. And so we ended up going through kind of a solicitation of offers process. We had two very strong developers that were interested in it. So we decided to have them kind of put their best and final offer together. And we issued a solicitation of offers. And I just wanted to provide the evaluation criteria that we've included in that. So, and these are actually ranked in our kind of mini RFP. So the project needs to be consistent with the city's 2040 comprehensive plan. The second criteria is the ability of the developer to perform, to make sure that the project moves forward. The third criteria being the purchase price, the fourth being closing date. And then based on the EDA, the EDA's feedback was also providing criteria about providing affordable housing. And then the sixth being the amount of tax increment financing that's requested for the project. So the RFP was issued several weeks ago. The responses came in on April 5th. We have two offers we've received, and the EDA will be reviewing those two offers at its meeting on April 26th at 6 p.m. They'll be having a special meeting. There'll be two components. There will actually be a closed session with the EDA to talk about the specifics of each of the offer. And then we actually will have the letter of intent with the chosen developer on the EDA agenda for approval to kind of wed one of the developers and move forward with a project. So they are extremely strong offers from very good developers. And we look to have this wrapped up with a purchase agreement in May of this year. So that project will be moving forward. The second project I wanted to update you is on the Rice Street Garden site. And this is at Roselawn and Rice Street in the Rice-Larpenter neighborhood. This is actually, it's highlighted on the map there. It's actually a 13-acre parcel of land. Some may know it as the former, is it Ziddle greenhouse? It was a greenhouse nursery property. It was acquired by St. Paul Regional Water a number of years ago for the potential inclusion in their campus for the water service, but they ultimately have determined it's not needed for their site, and so they went through a process and actually selected a developer to purchase the property. The developers PAC Properties. They've actually not done work in Maplewood before. They're actually done most of their work exclusively in St. Paul. But the benefit is that the Rice-Larpenter Alliance that's been formed really made the connection with PAC Properties. And they are very committed to a project that's consistent with the vision plan. So this is the page from the 2017 vision plan of the Rice-Larpenter Alliance, which calls for housing on the site, a mix of housing, affordable housing, and as well as a continuation of the gardens that have been on that site. So as you know, the site's been used by a community organization for gardening. And it's one of the largest community gardens in the entire metro, and is consistently full. It's always a waiting list for the plots out there. And so the developer is committed to including garden plots and some of this community ag function within the redevelopment plan. And I should say this, as I said, this page is from the actual vision plan. It's not the proposed concept plans from the developer. But so this project will be coming forward in the near future. This is a complex development, especially with some of the community partners that are needed for the potential farmers market and managing of the community gardens. And so because affordable housing projects require a number of financing sources, they will need tax credits, low-income housing tax credits for the project, and they have determined not to apply for the credits this year. So they won't actually be making the tax credit application until next year, 2022. But is committed to the vision plan, but also kind of engaging this neighborhood in providing new housing options for a neighborhood that I think it's increased in population by like several thousand people over the past number of years without a single increase in the number of housing units. So there's a strong demand for new affordable housing options in this neighborhood to serve that existing community. So know that project is moving forward, slowly, but moving forward. Unfortunately, redevelopment doesn't move at a lightning pace. It does take time. And then the other update I put in the staff report to cover was the South Maplewood area redevelopment. Most people know it as the Ponds project. Again, we talked about this at the last meeting about the partnership we are doing with Ramsey County to do a community engagement for the potential future uses of our county-owned properties, the current golf course, as well as the land adjacent to the correctional facility. I won't go through these in details, but since our last meeting, there's been kind of a third neighborhood meeting held in which the concept plans for development were presented. So this is Site A, the site north of the correctional facility. And each of these were kind of drawn as a continuum of options from, option one being no development, kind of keeping the site as it is today as undeveloped. And then up to kind of varying options of intensity, right? So option two is really single family with a significant community garden or community agriculture component. Option three is still single family, but a greater number of housing units. And then option four kind of includes some of the single family, small lot single family, but also incorporates then some of the medium or high density projects on that site. All of which, as you can see, still incorporate preservation of green space, incorporation of trails, connection to Battle Creek Park. Those were kind of key priorities we've heard, part of our community engagement of elements that really need to be incorporated into any potential development of these sites. We'll go to the pond next before I talk about kind of where this process will land. And then we did the same thing for the golf course property. So presented kind of a range of options for the ponds. I know they're hard to see on the site, but they range from, keeping it as a golf course, so really no change from its current operation as a golf course, and then all of which are really focused on housing, some commercial on the neighborhood center plan, option four, and all of which also, all the development options, which also would include some community gardens and agriculture. Again, strong community input for preservation of the wetlands, the natural resources, providing trails, having a community agriculture, community garden component, very strong support for those elements, but does provide some different scenarios of the types of development that could occur out there. Or I should say densities, intensities of housing that could occur on those sites. So the project isn't quite wrapped up. And to Bao's earlier question, we've actually partnered with the county on a significant amount of outreach. I think there's been 14 stakeholder meetings, really targeting the BIPOC community in this neighborhood. So there's a number of organizations we've met that are traditionally don't participate in the neighborhood meetings that we held. So I think there were 14 groups that were met with as part of our kind of small group stakeholder engagement. This is initially this planning effort was kind of anticipated to come up with a preferred design alternative, something similar to what we did in Gladstone back in 2007 or what was done in the North End, kind of having a single vision master plan. The community input we've received, I don't think we're going to get to that single plan. I think what ultimately the final deliverable will be was really showing these range of options and providing the community feedback and comments we've received on each of them and establishing kind of those priorities that have been identified by the engagement that we've done, because there's varying ranges there's no consensus of input on this plan about what it should be. There is very strong input for option 1 on both of these, which is keep it a golf course and keep it an open space and don't develop it. We are hearing very strong input on that. But we're hearing also some input on that there's a strong housing need in Ramsey County, and this could be a site that could provide some of those housing options. So I don't expect this document to kind of give us the solution to that or make any sort of final determinations on that question. As I said, I think it'll provide these range of options in the final report. Ultimately, the county board is having a workshop in May to provide their just to see this information, and then once that's been done, we'll bring it back to our council for a final acceptance of the final report for this project. And then lastly, last thing I just want to cover is some of the COVID business relief. We talked about this, I think, in our last meeting in 2020 about a number of the initiatives that the city implemented around business relief, but there's also been new data made available about the federal and regional programs. So both the Federal Payroll Protection Program has released some information on businesses in Maplewood, as well as the Small Business Relief Fund. And so you can see here that this is in Maplewood. There were 318 businesses that received the federal PPP loans, and the total amount for that aid within Maplewood was almost $23 million. So a significant amount of loans was provided to businesses in Maplewood. And I do have the full list of the 318 businesses if you're interested. Probably the big thing to note is you think a lot of that was 3M. It's not. I think 3M's share was like $30,000. So it was a strong disbursement of these funds across a number of different types of businesses in Maplewood. And then the Small Business Relief Fund, that was, as the name implies, was very targeted towards small businesses, I think fewer than 10 employees. And there was to our previous discussion, a strong partnership with community-based business organizations to target these to small businesses, and with specific outreach to minority-owned and women-owned businesses, and as well as creative businesses. So in Maplewood, there were 56 businesses that received those small business funds. I think they went up to $15,000, if I remember right. The total for distribution in Maplewood for those small businesses was just over $600,000. So we're paying attention to the new stimulus that was passed by Congress. There's going to be additional business relief in there, as well as housing, mortgage and rent payment assistance that we're paying attention to, but just wanted to kind of circle back on what the final numbers were for some of the federal and regional state programs and how our Maplewood businesses benefited from that. What I have not included in here was there was actually also direct payments from the state to businesses that were directly impacted by the governor's executive order. So restaurants, event centers, convention centers. The Department of Commerce hasn't released that information yet. I don't know actually if they will. We know there were direct payments to a number of our restaurant communities outside of these two particular programs. So I know it's a concern to our community of what's the impact been on the pandemic to our businesses, and these are important programs that our businesses have been able to be connected with. And then if you're interested, there is actually a map on Ramsey County's website with the location and names and amounts of all the small businesses that receive those grants. So then my final notes were just, as I mentioned earlier, the EDA is meeting on the 26th at 6 p.m. Before the council meeting. That will be online to talk about the London Lane properties, or London Lane property, as well as the potentially we'll be talking about the sale of some of those Gladstone properties. So if you're interested, the EDA will be meeting then. And then our next HEDC meeting is July 15th, 6 p.m. And I have two tentative agenda items, 3 months away, but I think we can pencil these in for now. One, as we talked about, we'll have the St. Paul Area Chamber of Commerce come and do the business retention report for 2020. And then I would also like to have the Metropolitan Consortium of Community Developers come and present on the Open to Business program. This is a program, you may have talked about it. It's now available to all Maplewood businesses, and they provide technical assistance as well as funding. They actually work with banks, and they have their own funding sources for small businesses to really intend to provide the technical assistance and funding for the growth of small businesses in Maplewood. So Noah Herr is our business liaison for this program, and I had a meeting with him a couple weeks ago, and he opened a business, or MCCD was one of the organizations that administered a lot of the loans for the counties and cities, and so their work entirely last year was essentially just it's getting through COVID loans. They're really looking to want to get back to the Open to Business program and focusing on those small business outreach. So figured we could bring him in and he can give you an overview of the program and talk about how it would benefit businesses in Maplewood. So that's all I have on my development update, unless there are other questions.
Jeff, I put in the chat. Can you say again, what is his name that will be coming in to present, or who works for the county?
He's Noah Herr, Herr.
Oh, okay, Noah Herr. Okay.
Yeah. You want me to send you his contact information? I can at least send a link onto the program to the group if you want to take a look.
That sounds good.
Okay, so that wraps up staff presentation. I just had one quick question, Jeff. And it's, I was going to send you an email about this, but the spring cleanup, the Maplewood spring cleanup is this Saturday. And, I think it's a great opportunity for, homeowners and businesses to kind of clean up, some of the stuff that they might have. It's mostly homes, but to get rid of some of the things that they have that is laying around and they don't know where to get rid of it. But I guess my question was, because I know the lines are really long and things like that. Is there a possibility that, and the neighbor had asked me, that there could be 2 sessions slated for the Maplewood cleanup, one maybe in the spring and one maybe in the fall? I'm not sure how much it costs, in terms of resource and, getting people to be there and to have Aldridge Arena, as the site for it. But could you just check to see if that's a possibility? Is that there could be a spring and fall cleanup? Or why we couldn't have that?
Sure. We actually do a fall cleanup. It's curbside though. So there is actually higher participation in our fall cleanup event than there is in our spring cleanup event. You wouldn't know it, but it's the whole month of October. So for the whole month of October, Republic Services offers a really steep discount on their bulky special item pickup curbside for the whole month. So because not everybody has the trailers and cars and stuff to get their stuff to an actual drop-off event, that's why we do the curbside event every fall.
Perfect, thank you. I did
Yep.
not realize that. And I don't know why my neighbor doesn't know that either.
Your neighbor's not the only one.
Okay, that sounds good, but, yeah, just a shout out to people who need to get rid of things that have a vehicle to make it to Aldridge Arena. It's a really, I think, a great fee structure as to, kind of getting rid of some of that stuff that you got laying around.
Yeah.
With that, I don't know if Dennis, is he on the line? Oh, there he is. Do you want to call for an adjournment or
Sure, I'll move for adjournment.
I will second? So with that, go
Yeah,
ahead.
July.
Yeah, next meeting is July 15th. Oh, the only thing I didn't mention is I don't know what the format will be on that yet. The council has been talking about when do in-person meetings return and do they stay on Zoom or in person? And so 3 months out, I don't know the format yet. We'll keep you updated though.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yep,
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.